Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Conversations with Rob, now called Fire Breathing Rob. It's at www.youtube.com/FIREBREATHINROB.
Sure, it's Peggy Sideratos.
Peggy Sideratos, and she has written the book, The Light Giver, and Other Stories to Raise Emotional Health, Healthy Children, rather. So Peggy, first of all, thanks so much for coming on the program. We're going to talk a lot about your book, but also the crisis at hand.
Sure, thanks so much for having me here, Rob. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, so Peggy, first of all, let's talk about what's going on. We saw the biggest outbreak in the country is definitely in New York, then followed by California and some other states also. Can you tell us right now, what are you feeling? What's going on? And anything else you can tell us would be great.
I think all New Yorkers right now are feeling a really heightened level of anxiety. This is really uncharted territory for all of us. And when we hear the numbers every day, it's so startling. Today, the Comfort, the big ship that was sent by the federal government, arrived into our borders. So they're saying we're going to have another 1,000 hospital beds right there. But there's a lot of fear and anxiety going on because they're not sure that we can handle the numbers. And despite the fact that we've been social distancing, and pretty much most New Yorkers have been just quarantined to their homes, it's still grown so much. And they say that we're probably haven't seen the peak yet. So that's another factor that's worrying us.
So let's talk about kids, because you know a lot about this as you being a former teacher in the school system and also writing this book, The Light Giver, and Other Stories to Raise Emotional Healthy Children. How would you, as a person that's dealt with kids many times throughout your career and worked with kids, keep kids at bay right now? They're stuck at home, no school. A lot of these kids aren't seeing their friends. So what would you give advice for kids and even their parents to tell them this story about, what is the coronavirus? How can, that's a big topic too. We need to describe this. And we don't know all the nits and crannies of the coronavirus ourselves. So how would you deal with kids on this aspect?
Honestly, I would say, depending, of course, on the age of the child, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be very much aware of what a child can handle depending on the stage. I mean, you can have, different age children in your household, and what you would tell a 5-year-old is going to be different than what you were going to tell a 10-year-old. Right. So the kids are keenly aware of what's going on. Whether we share information with them or not, they can sense when something's up just by our energy. They sink in. And even if you say to a kid, everything is okay, if you're not feeling okay, if you're not calm, they're going to pick it up. So I would say, talk to your kids, share age appropriate, maturity appropriate information with them. They're going to know some things that they might have either overheard from conversations, heard on the news, seen on the internet. So talk to them about, hey, let's talk a little bit about what you know, what questions you have, and give them information that they can handle according to their age and maturity level. Definitely don't lie, but you should also tell them, well, what have you done as a family to prepare for this? Because, for example, well, here's how we're preparing for this as a family. We've taken these precautions. We can practice washing our hands and being very careful about spreading the virus, and those normal things that they tell us on the news, just to make them feel like things are not completely out of our control. We do have some level of control by isolating ourselves socially, by taking these precautions, maybe by saying, okay, here's how we're stocking up on certain groceries, just so that we know, to just alleviate some of those fears as far as our preparedness as a family. But then there's also the emotional component, which is the most important right now. I mean, when kids look back at this time in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, think about what are they going to remember about this time. This could be an opportunity for you to teach them how to handle a crisis, how to handle fear and anxiety. And how do they learn that? They learn that from you. Because kids are not inherently coming to this world with this knowledge. They don't know how to handle fear, how to handle disappointment, and that's something that's going on too now, because they can't be with their friends. They can't do things they ordinarily do. They don't know how to inherently handle anxiety. So this is an opportunity for us as adults to show kids coping methods that we probably have in our experience, and share that with them as well.
Right. I didn't even speak about people that have disabilities. You know, we have a lot of kids in this country that are in wheelchairs, kids with autism, other developmental disabilities. I mean, a lot of those kids, you know, they don't understand what's going on. And how can you explain it to them? You know, we know I have a couple of family friends that have kids with autism, and you know, to explain it to somebody like that, they don't, if they're going out all the time, it's tough for them to learn not to go out. So
Absolutely.
that's another tough thing.
Absolutely. And that's where, and that's where you have to, as the parent really has to take the time to, the most important thing right now, and yes, I'm a teacher and I believe in educating kids and giving them the tools that they need to learn to get ahead. But I think the most important thing that we have to focus on right now, more than anything, with children and with ourselves, is our emotional health.
Yeah.
That's key. We have to help kids learn to deal with this. We have to not only try to be the example ourselves, but try to have them talk about it, and try to ask them also, what would make you feel better? You know, what do you think might make you feel better? Asking them so that we're also teaching them to learn to comfort themselves.
Yeah, it's tough. I do want to get into your book a little bit, though. And I know you didn't write the book about the coronavirus, but let's get into the book. Why did you write this book? I know you've been a teacher for a while. Is that what made you want to write this book?
Well, when I was teaching, one of the things that I saw is that when kids felt better about themselves, when they felt more secure about themselves, when their relationships were better, when they felt emotionally healthy, they succeeded. And when those things weren't in place, it was a bigger struggle. And as a teacher, I tried to address these needs, whether it be confidence or bullying, or if they had fears or disappointments that they were dealing with. If I address these things with my students, if I talked about them, and the way that I found the best way to communicate with kids about stuff like that is storytelling. It just does something to the brain. It's got all those feel-good hormones. So I would use storytelling the majority of the time as a way to spark conversations. So if I wanted to talk about bullying, I might initiate by reading a story about bullying, and then maybe sharing a personal story about being bullied as a child and how that affected me. That was a game changer. When kids started to see the connection, not just the story, but me as a teacher, as a human being, to themselves, that level of connection, that made all the difference. Because suddenly they didn't feel so different. They didn't feel as isolated. And maybe if they were going through bullying and somebody said, oh, that happened to me too, or whether it be a disappointment, that happened to me too. Oh, and then start that discussion. Well, how did you handle it? And what helped you? And that bonding also, well, kids academically excelled, emotionally did better, the relationships with the kids was better, and it carried over even outside of the home. It had such a big impact. But what I found was I couldn't always find resources. I couldn't always find books on the topics that I necessarily wanted to address with them. And so I felt called to create a book that could be used as a resource. So what I did is I wrote 22 individual stories that addressed a whole bunch of different topics, from fear, discouragement, criticism, guilt, and envy, comparing yourself to somebody else, and then tenets of good character like honesty, compassion, kindness, giving, and the meaning of what love really means. And I put those books together. I put those stories together into one book. I'll show my book to everybody. The Light Giver and Other Stories to Help Emotionally Healthy Children. And what I did is I knew that this could be a helpful resource, not only to teachers, but to parents. Mm-hmm. So after each story, I put 3 discussion questions so that if parents want to sit and read the story, it takes like 10 minutes, not even of your time. You can read the questions at the end and say, hey, if you've ever felt a disappointment like this, how did you handle it? And what did you do? And do you think that this character did the right thing handling it? How could they have handled it better? Just to open the lines of communication with parents. And I even included some vocabulary words with it. So right now, especially if we're stuck at home, you can take a little story and you can make like a mini lesson out of it. And when I was done with that, I also created a workbook, the Light Giver Stories workbook. And this basically has other discussions, activities, and fun things that kids can do with their parents or at home that just take it one step further. Just so I hate to plug myself, but they're available on Amazon now. We have them at a very reduced price because of this circumstance. And if you do want to get the free stories, you can go to my website, www.thelightgiverstories.com. You can get 2 free stories and 2 free lessons that you could just use right away at home.
But what do you feel like is the biggest issue in schools right now?
I think the biggest issue, and I wouldn't just say schools, I would just say even people in general. Okay. There is this sense in all of us that we are not enough the way we are. And kids have that feeling as well. We compare ourselves to other people and say, well, you know, this person can do this and this person can do that, and I'm not as good as this, and I'm not as good at that, I'm not as strong. And there's nothing good that can come from comparing ourselves, number one, to another person. And one of the lessons that I have in the stories and in the workbook is that you are enough just the way you are. And that we all come with strengths and gifts and talents, and we all come with weaknesses. And if we can teach children that that is also by design, like it's not an accident that not everybody can paint like a Picasso or you know, we can't all sing like, you know, the best singers in the world. We're not designed to be that way. And so we should really celebrate the things about us that are good and realize that we are not supposed to have everything. It's done intentionally so that we can rely on each other. If everybody could sound like the greatest singer in the world, when somebody would sing, it'd be like, so what? What's the big deal? If we were all the most amazing artists in the world, it'd be like, yeah, well, I can do that too.
Right.
But it's in celebrating not only our gifts and our talents, but recognizing I have a weakness, but you have a strength. It's meant to complement each other and not to use it as a way to tear ourselves down.
Peggy, lastly, can you tell people where they can find you, your website, Facebook, also get the book one more time?
Sure. The website is www.thelightgiverstories.com, and you can go there and get the 2 free stories. The stories that I'm giving away right now, one deals with fear and one deals with patience, which I think is something that we have to deal with. In fact, the story is called The What If Monster, which is something that's haunting all of us right now. And the other one is The Double Test of Patience, and it's about a little girl who has a family move in with her when they're going through a crisis and having to learn with being in close quarters. So I thought that those could apply. The books are available on Amazon. Huge sale right now. The Light Giver and Other Stories to Raise Emotionally Healthy Children, and the Light Giver Stories workbook. And I just want to put it out there. If there's anybody who's out there who's listening and maybe has a question or wants me to give them some advice, if there's any way that I can serve you, whether it be a question about the stories or the workbook activities, or something that you just want to know about your kids, if there's any way I can help or I can get you some information, please don't hesitate to contact me at Peggy at thelightgiverstories.com, Peggy at thelightgiverstories.com, P-E-G-G-Y. And also, you can reach out to me on my Facebook page, The Light Giver. Just put in a thing for The Light Giver. You can like my page. I have a blog that is on the website and on the Facebook page that gives parents some helpful advice on how we can handle this situation and how we can help kids so that they can be as emotionally healthy as possible.
Peggy, thanks so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rob. And I want to just tell everybody, stay safe, be well. And I can't wait for the day that this is all over and we can go back to hugging all our family and friends and shaking hands with our neighbors. Stay safe, and thank you so much for this opportunity.